Urban Sprawl, Overpopulation by Tracy O'Connor. By definition, urban sprawl means the process by which large numbers of people become permanently concentrated in relatively small areas, forming cities. These cities then continue to expand outward, using up more and more land and resources. Urban sprawl can be attributed to overpopulation. They go hand in hand. I mean, face it, more people mean more houses, more food, more cars, more clothes, more of, well, everything, including pollution and waste. But before we get to that, populations rise and fall according to the birth rate and death rate. There are many factors that can affect the population: fertility rate, quality of life, and the status of women in a society. As you can see from the chart, from 1950 to 2016, the Southwest was seeing a growth rate above 200%. The current average population increase is estimated at 81 million people a year. Overpopulation is the root cause of urban sprawl, as well as environmental degradation. Let's back up a minute. Why are there so many people? Where did they all come from? No, this isn't a lesson in sex ed. It's a serious question as to how did we let our planet get so crowded. To answer that, we must first look at the past. If we look back at the caveman days, we'll see that we started out very primitive. We hunted where the food was, and we traveled with the seasons following the food. We kept our families small because food was scarce and unpredictable. We were hunters and gatherers. We sustained with very little, and therefore wasted very little. Once we learned to plant seeds and raise the livestock instead of chasing it down, we began to stay in one place. This brought on farm settlements. We settled into a life of building a home and raising larger families. However, infant mortality and the death rate were still high at this point, so population remained relatively low. By the turn of the century, towns were popping up all over: stores, restaurants, feed mills, factories, and so forth. Urban sprawl was in its infancy. These towns would expand to allow for the workers and their families. It was the beginning of urbanism as we know it today. People moved to the city and began to travel to and from work in the factories and in the mines. This increase in productivity also increased the population. More workers were needed for the new industry, as well as the demand of the farms that were still thriving. The quality of life began to improve, so the population began to increase. Of course, our national population in 1910 was just over 92 million people. To compare, the population in 2020 was just over 320 million people. Coal was the greatest commodity. It was needed to produce the energy for the new steam engines, electricity to burn, and burn for heat. So mining in America began to boom. We were strip mining and subsurface mining for all of the coal. It was and still is the most impactful resource to the environment. It causes extensive habitat destruction and puts the most carcinogens in the air when burned. The men were leaving their farms to begin mining for coal and eventually working in the factories to build the steam engines and products that were being introduced. Therefore, the cities became larger. This created its own set of problems due to the increase in food, waste, and resources that it demanded. Cars were showing up and the streets were crowded with them. This was the dawning of a rapidly changing landscape in America. We began able to transport not only ourselves great distances, but we could now transport goods. Of course, all this movement meant using more of our non-renewable resources like oil and coal. We were mining at a rapid rate. More people were on the move and demanding certain goods and services. Fuel, building materials, and other resources were in high demand. Also, waste was becoming a problem. More people meant more waste and pollution. We were needing to figure out a plan to combat this growing issue. It was around this time that a British engineer by the name of Guy Stewart Callender began to note that the greenhouse effect was real and that the earth was warming due to the new industrial revolution. However, most of his findings were met with skepticism and no real change took place. We kept growing and using up every inch of real estate we could. Houses sprung up in rapid numbers. Over the next few decades, more and more suburbs were being created. Everyone wanted out of the city and into suburban America. We began driving to our jobs, to our schools, to shop, and so forth. The days of the farms were disappearing and the new day of land consumption was born. This kind of rapid development replaced natural ground cover, causing flooding from water runoff. Too much concrete hinders water from seeping into the soil, so soil erosion was on the rise, and natural habitats were being threatened. In the mid-1970s to 1980s, global warming was becoming a greater concern due to the smog that was forming over the cities. Therefore, in 1970, the EPA, or Environmental Protection Agency, was formed. Their main purpose was to work with other agencies in an effort to not only protect the environment, but to protect citizens from health issues due to the increase in pollution. Problems continue to increase, though. Traffic congestion, air and water pollution, mining of more minerals to produce the fossil fuels needed to transport everything, and everyone exploded. By the 1970s, there were over 200 million cars on the road. All this energy, all these people, and all this pollution. We never slowed down either. By 1990, that statistic increased to over 500 million cars on the road. People were beginning to spread out of the cities for the suburbs. Suburban living was considered optimal at this time, and everyone was wanting that single house with a yard, the proverbial American dream. This meant that more and more people were traveling to and from work, shopping, and entertainment. Urban sprawl, along with overpopulation, has ushered in pollution and waste beyond what we are able to manage. The depletion of our non-renewable resources, the pollution of our water and air that we breathe, is reaching the breaking point. We have caused extinction of animals, soil erosion, acid rain, melting of the polar ice caps, rising of the oceans, and we have put holes in our ozone layer. We have filled our planet with landfills and empty mine shafts. We have done this with little to no regard. So how do we get from that to this? What is the answer to reverse or fix all this progress? Some of the damage we have done cannot be undone, so what is the answer? We need to change our mindset. We need to change the way we view our world, and we need to stop the madness of money and power. We need to raise our children to respect the world around them, and we need to begin living with less. We need to realize we cannot buy our way out of this mess. Some suggestions have been made, such as revitalizing the inner cities. By doing so, it will stop, or at least slow down, urban sprawl. If we can repair and, in a sense, upgrade what we already have, we could save more new land from being developed. Adding green space and alternative energy sources will aid in slowing down global warming and pollution. It will be a decades-long process. We didn't get into this environmental shape we are in overnight, and we certainly won't fix it overnight. These pictures show the before and after what can be done if we use what we have to enhance green space and cleaner energy. We will be on our way to at least slow down urban sprawl and environmental degradation. Population control is a controversial alternative to control overpopulation and therefore control urban sprawl. Since overpopulation is the root of the urban sprawl issue, it stands to reason that if we can control the population growth, we can then control urban sprawl. Depletion of our resources, reduction of pollution levels, global warming, and poverty, just to name a few. Being such a hot button issue for ethical, religious, and basic human rights reasons, this formal resolution has not been implemented in America as it has in China. China created the one-child policy in an effort to stop overpopulation. In 2015, this policy increased to 2 children, and in 2021, it increased to 3 children. Is limiting the number of children someone can have the answer? Less people would mean less houses, less food, less waste, less of, well, everything. In short, we are a growing species. We like our freedom of sprawl. We have stripped the soil, mined the resources, polluted the air, polluted the water, dumped our trash, and took advantage of our great earth. We have caused animals to go extinct, and we have caused disease and famine. We have wasted more than our earth can regenerate. We are arrogant and ungrateful, and we have become a nation of consumers, not a nation of citizens.